Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Visual Wilderness. We're really happy to have you here with us tonight. And tonight is our big critique for our April assignment. So we've been away, we've been in New Zealand, and so our critique is a little bit later than usual, but here we are, ready to go. And we'll start out by introducing ourselves, and then we're just going to jump right into it from there. So we're going to do something a little different tonight. I am going to introduce Jay, and then each of us will introduce somebody else, rather than always introducing ourselves, which feels a little awkward. So Jay Patel, the amazing Jay Patel, has been shooting for several years. Maybe he started in about 2000. Is that right, Jay? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and he went pro in 2005. He is married to this weird lady. I don't know, she's weird, but anyway, yeah, and he writes ebooks, he teaches workshops, he is funny and friendly, and he doesn't bite very often or very hard. All right. Hey.
And I am going to introduce the amazing Raina Patel, who you've been hearing. She's just as beautiful as talented, and
Thank you.
she is not afraid to let you know what she thinks about your photos. So hold on, and the critique is coming up. But I have to say that I have the best job in the world to be able to travel with my wife, Raina Patel, who's an amazing landscape photographer, and I would not give it up for anything in the world.
Neither would I.
Brent.
So I'm going to introduce Johnny, the amazing Johnny Spencer, or he's also known as Chinese Panther, which is another story altogether. He's an awesome guy. He's a multi-talented photographer, a videographer, and all the rest. He's got so many talents, I don't know where to start. He's been photographing since he was about 3 years old. And yeah, you can follow him on visualwilderness.com. He's an awesome guy, and he's my travel partner too.
Yeah, wrap up, bro. Wrap that up, man. That's all good.
All right.
And all right, well, we've got B-Man, aka Brent Mail, with us, who was my partner in crime in the field. We are the Visual Wilderness video team, but also a studio owner right near the beach. What a legend! And just an all-round great guy. And you'll find him over at Visual Wilderness too. Get to know him. We love him.
Most of the time.
We do.
unless he's behind me with going down a big hill.
You better look out. Not so stepping on his feet with that live GoPro.
But, yeah, he almost knocked me down.
Wait until you see that footage, Jay. It's awesome.
I was just about to say we need to share that with everybody, actually.
We're looking forward to it.
Definitely made the outtakes.
Yeah. All right, so let's move forward. We're really excited. We've just returned from this trip to New Zealand, and we are hard at work already putting together the videos and the courses. So you guys can look forward to that course coming out soon if you're interested in learning more about photography. And all right, Jay, do you want to bring up a couple of the images? We want to show, first of all, before we really get into the critiques, we want to show some of the really remarkable images that came up in the assignment this month. We've had some gorgeous work that people are submitting. Such a variety, such creativity. It's been really cool.
Do you want me to share the images first, or do you want me to share the good critiques that we saw? So
let's start with the images, and then we'll go into the critiques.
All right, so one of the images that was the one you wanted to highlight is this one. Let me share my screen so you guys will be able to see this. Give me a second, and I will do a screen share.
We just have a few images here that each month we try and pull out a few that really stood out to us that we thought were just really beautiful. We love the colors in this one. The composition was fun and unique. It's such a nice close-up, and that's what the theme was this month. So it's really lovely. Jay, you can go on to the next one.
In this image, I just want to let you know, is by Patty Morgan.
Yep, P.D. Morgan. Where I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce the name, but it's lovely, shot. So nice job, Petey, or Petty. Sorry.
But she's a New Zealander, by the way. I have to let you know.
Ah, New Zealander. Excellent.
So the other thing I wanted to point out this month is this particular image. The image is nice in itself, but what is more interesting about this is I love how Jenny Wolf is going about creating her images. Jenny Wolf is a fairly accomplished photographer on visual wilderness, and I've seen some of her work, and she has some stunning work. She actually has a fantastic image in her portfolio, which was this, which if you were to zoom in and you can see all the details and the water drops and everything, it looks just awesome.
Really gorgeous shot.
What she decided to do was, instead of submitting the best works that she had done years ago about with the assignment, she actually went ahead and created one. What this forces you to do is this forces you to see what difficulty you have in creating an assignment from scratch. And for this reason, I have to highlight this out. There's no better way to learn than to go ahead and take a shot yourself. Now, you may not come away with the best shot, but the knowledge that you gain out of that is awesome. So, way to go, Jenny Wolf.
Yeah,
very nicely
she
done.
shared both of those photos in the same post, and she said, you know, this is the one that I'm going to submit for the assignment, and she explained why she chose this image over the other that she felt was her, you know, some of her best work. And I think that I completely agree with Jay, you know, and I'm sure Johnny and Brent agree too. This is the spirit of visual wilderness, right? You know, this is what it's all about: learning, putting yourself out there, you know, pushing yourself to create new images, and you know, to sort of push your boundaries. So awesome job, Jenny.
Yeah, it's amazing. She's got some awesome work. Thanks, Jen. It's glad to have you as part of the community. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out one more image, which is this one. Can you guys see it on my screen?
Yep.
All right, this is by Tanya Cord. This image it grabbed my attention because of a principle that we actually have published in one of our ebooks, which is called background versus help me out, sweetheart.
Subject versus ground.
Subject versus background.
Or figure versus ground.
Figure versus ground principle. Thank you. Yeah. Figure versus ground principle. And what this image has done, which is very well, is it has a fairly uniform background and has a single subject which stands out dramatically from the background. So what it does is when you look at it in a thumbnail size as well as large size, that subject draws your attention like nothing else. Mm-hmm. And from a composition standpoint and from getting people's attention standpoint, an awesome job by Tanya Cord.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. And just so you guys know, Tanya is the awesome visual wilderness photographer of the week also. So congratulations, Tanya.
Nice job.
Yeah. Good on you, Tanya. Enjoy your trip to NZ. You're going to love it. We loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, send us an email. We'll be happy to answer a few questions along the way.
So, Jay, I'm looking at this collection of images you have there, and I see that you're actually missing one that I wanted to include in this that I wanted to call out. So I'm going to pull it up on my own screen. If you could flip over to my screen and take a look at that. This is an image by Marianne Marshall, and you know, it's sort of an interesting coincidence because Marianne's image stood out to me. I pulled it up. I didn't look at the name. I looked at the image and I thought, oh, this is neat because it's sort of different. It's, you know, there were a lot of flowers and a lot of bugs and things like that, the kind of thing you think about when you think about details. But I kind of liked this because, you know, it's just something different. It has, you know, it's this little nail in there, which is not necessarily nature, but what stands out to me is the fact that nature is sort of reclaiming it. You know, it's taking over, and I love that about it. So, not only did it stand out to me for that reason, but also it so happens that Marianne Marshall was down in New Zealand with us, and I got to meet her in person. She's a member of the Arcanum, and she's a member of Visual Wilderness. So, you know what? It's a small world.
The other thing that I love about this image is the field of the perspective that she has chosen. By getting really, really low to the ground, what she has done is she has blurred out the foreground as well as the background so effectively that all distractions, other than the nail and that single line of textures that is in plane with the nail, are eliminated.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting and unusual shot, so I really wanted to bring that one up, and I will stop my screen share here, and we can get back to, we can move on, but nice job, all of you, Jen and Tanya and Jenny and, sorry, Jenny and Tanya and Petey, there it is, and Marianne. So the next thing we wanted to do was just bring up a couple of the critiques that really stood out to us. Jay, are you going to bring those up on your screen?
Yeah, I'll let you do a screen share again. So
Yep, no problem. So we always try to sort of show some of the critiques that come up. They can be so well done. It's neat to see what people are saying. It's neat to see the conversations that are moving on. Jay found a critique. I'm afraid I don't remember who it was. Jay, do you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, it was again by Jenny Wolf. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it. I'll put this in the. It was on Derek's post, and what she has done is she had actually taken some time and looked at the photo, and she had decided that there are things that needed improvement, including light conditions, and put down her analysis in such a great detail. What this does is not only it helps Derek out, but it helps Jenny out more than that, because next time Jenny's out shooting wildlife, she'll actually think about those things, blown highlights and patchy details and where to focus. And having said that, this kind of analysis is what you need to make sure that you can take a look at your photo and then decidedly take it to the next level, saying, if I'm in this position, I'm shooting this same subject, what should I be doing?
So I think Jenny just went above and beyond. I mean, and we're seeing this repeatedly. So again, thank you, Jenny. Big shout out to Jenny for really just putting so much effort and so much of herself into visual wilderness. You know, this kind of critique is so fantastic. For, you know, Derek, I mean, wow, right? Very cool. So, but we don't want to suggest that long critiques are the only way to go. You don't have to go in and write a novel. You can, you know, shorter critiques are great too, and that's why I wanted to highlight this critique on Glenda Worley's beautiful photo here. Jay, if you could scroll down, the critique is by Betty Hodges. And it's actually very simple, what she said. You can see it's not very long, but she actually pushed back a little bit, which I really liked. Totally respectfully. She was very respectful, and she asked a question. She said, hey, look, I agree. I agree with some of what people are saying. I see what they're saying, but I'm wondering if maybe there could be a different interpretation here. She said, is it really a bad thing for there to be more than one point of interest attracting our attention in a photo? She said, in the case of your photo, the secondary point of interest is, well, interesting. It's not like it's a strange, irrelevant, glowing orb. So she says, this is an honest question. Can someone sort that out for me? And this kind of thing, you know, it may seem like it's not a big deal, but if Jay scrolls down, you'll see what's happened. That question spawned this wonderful conversation that got people thinking. It got people, you know, reevaluating the photo and thinking about why they said what they said. I think that kind of question is excellent, and I love that that's what visual wilderness is bringing into, you know, the critique process. So awesome job. I love that this is where it went. I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's so great. I totally agree with you guys. It's just, we've got so many great people in here. It's just, oh man, I don't know what to say. It just blows my mind, guys. Every time I jump on and see posts from Betty and Jan and people, you know, it's just awesome. And I got to say, I haven't done a lot of critiquing in the past, and I feel free to say that. And actually getting in and doing critiques on other people's images, it's, to be honest with you, it's more powerful than, it pushes me further than actually getting people to critique my own images. It's such a great way to push yourself forward. I love it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So one other thing that I do want to point out about this critique session is that in detail session, more than in the first assignment that we had, shallow DOF, there were 2 or 3 critiques that actually spawned an entire discussion, and what ended up happening was the person who actually submitted the photo ended up changing the photograph. We pointed one of those out in our last Hangout discussion, and I wanted to point out that there were a few other ones that were also in the same thing. So anyway, all I wanted to say was good job on those discussions, keep them happening, and let's go with it. So having said that, let's go into the critique session itself. And Marina, I'm going to start this one since you started the last one, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Jump right in.
All right. So my first critique session is about this particular image. And I chose this image because I thought it was interesting. I've shot these before. And one of the questions that I asked Mark, whose image this was, hey, what about all these distracting white dots over here that are there and the seaweed? And Mark says, well, you want to keep things natural and not really lose anything. Well, the photo itself is good, but I find that there are a lot of distracting elements in it. The details are absolutely great. These sea anemones are gorgeous to photograph. So if you really don't want to clone these out, take a look at our last post on Visual Wilderness that says technical knowledge is not enough. In a case like this, you can be very creative. When we were in Australia, we faced the similar situation with stuff in the sea anemones, clam bits and things that they eat, leftover sand. What we do is we use seawater to clean them out before we take a photograph. It takes only a couple of minutes and probably faster than you can clone these out in Photoshop.
Jay, sorry to break in there, but we're still seeing the tiger lily or lily image. If you could, or the water lily image, if you could bring up the other, that would be great.
Next time, we'll start with the browser first because I do forget to share.
Yeah, no problem. So, there it is. Much better.
All right, so this is the image that I was talking about, but you can go and see this image on the assignment as well. But so anyway, so what my critique was that not necessarily anything to do with the photo itself and how you correct it. Sometimes a correction has to be done in the field. So before you take the photo, it's very important to say what to photograph and what not to photograph. And you'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks. And if there are things that are distracting, try to come up with some imaginative solution to avoid those distracting elements. Any other comments?
Johnny and Brent, do you guys have anything you want to add to that? Anything specific?
Oh, I think it's really great advice, and you know, I've been playing a lot more with macro, and particularly on a recent trip, and just cleaning up the area and getting things done in the field and in camera. It makes such a big difference when it comes to post-processing. Because if you're like me, you have limited time when you get back home, so with family commitments and stuff. So it's so nice to get those things done in the field and in camera. Mm-hmm. It's awesome, Jay.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree, guys. And I always ask myself this question when I'm photographing: what is the point of interest? What part of the image do I want someone to focus on, or look at, or have their eyes move into?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. This is a shot from Gary Shaddux, and I wanted to critique this because for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think it's a neat image, and it has some really, has a lot going for it. Also, I wanted to point out that the header or the subject of Gary's post was something to the effect of, "I'm struggling with this assignment," or "details are difficult for me," shallow depth of field close-ups are difficult for me. And I thought, this is an interesting thing. Rather than just saying, I'm not going to do it, throwing up his hands and saying, it's not going to happen. And Gary actually, put his neck out. He went, he took a photo, he worked hard at it, and he put it out there for review. I think, when you don't feel like you're very good at something, sometimes it's really hard to push yourself to make that step. So awesome job for that, Gary. I love that. And I guess I'll move into talking about the image here so we can keep going. But so this is a grape hyacinth sticking out of the snow, and I think Gary had said he didn't know what kind of flower it was. I'm pretty sure it's a grape hyacinth. What stands out to me about the photo is that, the fact that this flower is coming out of a little hole in the snow, that the snow is melting around the flower, and it creates this little, almost a natural frame there, and an extra bit of interest without being too intrusive. The flower itself is still very clearly the point of interest. That's totally cool. But in addition to that, this really subtle circle in the snow is neat. I like that. A couple of things I think could be improved. The vignetting on the outside, I think it's a little bit too extreme. Just a very subtle vignette would work here, or even taking away the vignette entirely. And the reason I say that is because snow that is gray feels dirty, and so you hate to have snow losing that coloring. If you want to do a vignette like this, I might recommend maybe just shifting it towards blue instead of leaving it gray, because blue feels cool, it feels cold, it feels fresh. Gray feels a little dingy. So there's that. The other thing I wanted to point out is that in the shadow of the flower there on the snow, there's actually a little bit of an odd coloring to it. The shadow appears to be slightly blue, and that would be fine, except that it contradicts the false shadows that have been added around the edges. Because they're gray, the shadow in the middle feels like it shouldn't be blue, if that makes sense. So I would actually just go in, take those vignettes, and make them a little bit more blue, or tone them down a little bit, even leave them out completely, and it would still work. I also think that a little bit of a crop would work here, either cropping up from the bottom to create a horizontal rectangle, or cropping both from the left and from the bottom to recreate this square crop that works well enough for me. It doesn't bother me. I think there's a lot of empty space there that's not necessary, and yeah, so that's my opinion. Anybody else want to add to that?
I wanted to add one thing is to make life easier for you. I mean, dealing with the snow and all the shadows and things. You can always as well focus in on grape hyacinth itself and just make that the entire image. I have seen photos of grape hyacinths up close, and the textures and details in them are just awesome.
Yeah, but I think in this case he really wanted to show that opening in the snow. He actually commented on that in his description. So I think I see what he was getting at, and I kind of like what he was trying to do. So yeah. And I think you guys will notice too that, Jay and I, Johnny, Brent, we don't always agree on things like this in our critiques, and I think that's actually really valuable too. If you can be aware that just because I say I think it should be one way and Jay says it should be one way, well, neither of us is really right. It's just our opinion, and you should always decide on your own which advice you want to follow, or if you want to follow advice at all. So take it with a grain of salt. Run with it if you want to, or leave it to the wind, right?
Yep, and everybody will see things differently, though. Yeah. So just remember that.
Absolutely. All right, next image.
So this is the image that I wanted to comment on, and I can see why a lot of people were struggling. I saw quite a few images like this. I'm going to point out another image later on in here as well. What this is missing is there's a great set of details in the foreground, but all of those details in the foreground is uniform. Nothing really stands out. There's no common point of interest in the foreground element. What I actually would like to see is, you see how uniform this area is. This is green and brown textures. If there was, say, a small mushroom standing out, or if there was a flower, or if there was an area of red lichen, something that stands out and creates a point of interest would actually grab the attention of the viewer, and that would actually make an outstanding image. I've seen several images by several people that are either of ice or snow that were submitted for assignment like that, which were sort of uniform in nature and didn't really have a strong defining point of interest. So when you're creating a macro subject, like the image before, like Gary's image over here, had a very strong point of interest. This one contradicts that by saying there is a distinct lack of point of interest in here.
Mm-hmm. And I think to add to that, that the tree or the trunk, whatever it is behind, actually pulls away from the foreground area,
Yeah.
as a a really stark line against the white background, and so it feels like it might be the point of interest, and then of course because it's out of focus, it says, well, maybe I'm not, but it does kind of want to pull you away, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. That tree, my eye just draws straight to that, and that's a really good point too, Verena. You know, the background or whatever's out of focus is just as important as the subject, and yeah. But yeah, there definitely could have been something cool there. It looks like there's some good stuff going on. It just needed that point of interest in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
Next one.
Yep, I agree. All right, we just have a few more minutes here, and we're going to see if we can get a couple more in, so we'll go through them quickly.
I think we should continue and finish these because last time we went on a little bit longer as well.
That's fine. I think, oh, that's right. We did go a little bit longer for our critique. So, heck, we'll finish the images we chose. Good idea, Jay. So this is a shot from Joe Hudspeth. And one of the things I really loved about it is that I didn't know what it was at first. I looked at it, I thought it was ice, little bubbles in ice, and it turns out it is actually glass. So it's this really cool close-up of glass. I thought it was kind of neat. One thing that I think that Joe was trying to show was sort of the changing light through the glass, and I thought that was a neat way to look at it. I wonder if this image might work better as a black and white. I think you would still get the range of light through it, but I think there's a lot of color happening here that is sort of distracting. Some reddish color in the background, some yellowish tones in the glass itself, things like that. So that, for example, I think would help. The other thing is that, again, there's not a clear point of interest here. It's an abstract, and sometimes that works really well. But I wonder if it might have worked well to choose a single piece of the broken glass, put it slightly off center, and let the rest of the image be a little less important. There are ways you can do that. You can choose a larger piece to focus on and let smaller pieces surround it. Look at the glass and find areas where that works. You can zoom in, get in really, really close if you have the lens capabilities to do that. Or you can actually, use a vignette to pull the attention to one area, things like that. So there are lots of options for that. One thing I do want to point out is that, as in terms of visual wilderness itself, we're usually looking for nature photos. I pulled this out anyway because sometimes I think it's helpful to critique an image that isn't a nature photo. But just a reminder in the future, try and keep in mind that we're really working for nature photos here, and that's our goal. Now, anything else you guys want to add?
No, I just second that about the nature photos arena. Like a lot of, you're going to get better critiques from the community and us. I think if they are more nature based, given that's our main focus. So yeah, but still great image. I love it.
All right, next one.
Yep.
All right, so here's an image from Lisa Peterson. I love the colors in the image. The exposure is awesome, and I'm guessing from the description that this is a reflection on the glass of all colors, which is very creative. My only concern with this image is that this image has a figure versus ground going for it, but doesn't quite work out as well as Tanya Court's image that I'm going to show over here. So let me give you an example. When I look at this image, I see that the person, Lisa, wanted to highlight the fall color reflections in the glass. Great, I see the reflections. But as soon as I look at it, my eyes are drawn by the textures on the wood. Now, those are not necessarily bad, but then my eyes are drawn towards other larger distractions in the wood. For example, the hinges and the clips and the other things. So if the image was just about the textures in the wood and a single pane of window, it would actually stand out much more than all the hinges and different textures in the wood down here and crossbars and the tree on the side.
Okay, Jay, so I have a question for you. How would you feel about this image if it were cropped down to a pano crop, for example, and the crop came just a little bit above the window itself on the top, so that the white line and the extra line of wood there at the top were cropped out, and on the bottom it were cropped maybe, I can't decide if I'd want to crop it right below the window itself or if I'd crop it actually below the little latches.
Yeah, so
Bottom.
so one of the things I was going to suggest is rather than going for a pano crop, one other crop you can do is cut through the middle of the window and then include just the right window with the wood frame around it as in the lower thirds. And then what you do is you draw the attention of a single textured wood panel around the window. Panel crop would also work, don't get me wrong, but that was exactly what I was going for. Is there are a lot of distractions that make the figure versus ground not work out very well in a case like this. Mm-hmm. And by cropping or by selecting a different composition, the image would have worked out. The image would have been much stronger, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because to me, I really like the image as it is. I think what stands out to me is, are two things. One, the white line at the top, which is why I would crop slightly below that. And two, the tree trunk in the reflection. And I wonder if just taking a step in one direction, taking a step to the left would help by just eliminating that tree trunk. So, but that's just my opinion, again, it's a little different from Jay's, and there it is. So take it or leave it, guys. All right, let's take a look at this next image. Oh, good, Brent's back. We lost him for a minute there to a client who came in. So it's good. Thanks for coming back, Brent. We're glad to have you. All right. So this is a shot from Richard Bowie, and I chose this one because I felt it was really unique. It was very, very different. It's a very small image. Yeah, pretty cool, huh, Johnny? It's a very small image. I wish it were larger. I wish I could really get in and look at the details, but that's okay as it is. I think there are a couple of things I would change. First of all, the crop at the top is very tight on the wing. I'd love to give that little bird just a little bit more room to fly. I think when you're photographing an animal of some kind, you usually want to give that animal room to move into the frame. So he should have a little room above him and a little room to the left. I like how much space is on the left. I want a little bit more on the top. On the bottom, we could even crop a little tighter as long as he gets a little more up top. So that's really the one thing that I would change about this. I actually really like the unusual black and white conversion. I think it's really cool. The bird almost looks like smoke to me. So it's really unique.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I particularly really like this image, and I love the post-processing. And I'm like you, Verena. I'd love to see a little bit more room at the top. And you could, if this happened to be the frame that he actually shot, you could, because that wing has got a little bit of blur there, you could actually give it a bit more room in Photoshop and fake it out a bit. But the other thing I picked too, Verena, because I really love the bird, I was a bit distracted by the little bits of white around the screen. So I remember that was one thing I said. I actually cleaned it up for him and had a look in Lightroom myself, and I preferred those taken away. But that's personal preference. And I just love the processing, mate, and I love the shutter speed you chose and the wings in motion. Just awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really a big fan.
Yeah. It's really a dynamic shot, isn't it?
It is.
So,
it's
I like that a lot. And I don't know if I'd take out the spots in the background entirely, but I would definitely maybe bring them down a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's what it needs.
What I was going to suggest about the spots in the background is these two very bright ones on the edges are the ones
at the top.
At the top.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do is they cut the black frame so sharply that a lot of times in a detail images, if there is an object or or a flower that cuts the frame slightly like that, I will either crop it or I will clone it out.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't mind seeing, especially the ones on the edges, taken away. So, and just give them a little more room to fly, and I love it.
Yeah, great
And
job.
that's such
Thanks.
an easy thing, like Johnny was saying. It's so easy when your background is pretty much black. Even if you don't have the extra space in the original image, you can actually just create it
Yep.
and give them a little more space. So.
All right, next one. We have two more to go, and I'm going to do this one. So this is, I'm assuming this is black and white image, but at first I assumed this was a black and white image. But then when I looked at it closer, I could see the browns and things sticking out in the image. So I'm going to critique this as if this is a color image. Now, if it isn't, then my mistake.
All right, it looks like a color image to me, too.
Yeah, so I'm going to critique it. I suspect that this is ice or snow. Now, just like Reina suggested that when I look at ice and snow, I tend to leave a slightly bluish cast in it to create a color of coolness. And what this image has is it looks like a pretty gray image to me with no blue cast on it. So it is very hard for me to fathom the feeling of coldness that I get out of this image. The second thing is this image has sort of pseudo point of interest, which is hopefully this little lump of ice that is there. But it also lacks point of interest, very much like Torban's image earlier. So Janet, if you are trying to create an image of ice, what I would recommend is get in close, really close, and select a single bubble or a single crack, very much like what Reina was going for when she critiqued Joe's image of the glass, that either you want to be able to create a focus point by getting in close or move out and have a distinct larger object be point of interest, very similar to, say, a grape hyacinth over here. Now, if it is just image of ice on ice, that point of interest by moving out is quite often difficult to create because as you move out, more distracting elements will come into play that will have the similar textures, tones, and colors as the element that you're trying to highlight. So one of the things I find it easier when photographing ice water is to be able to move in closer and focus on a single droplet or a single crack or a single sliver of ice that kind of stands out from the background. So those are my two pieces of advice for you next attempt if you wanted to make. One last observation about this image. The top right corner looks very hot as if there is a loss of details. And whenever there's a loss of details in a highlight with this big of an area, now it could be my monitor, so I haven't calibrated or measured it, but it looks very bright. And if that is not your point of interest, those bright highlights form a distracting point.
Yeah, it is. I agree. It's a little distracting. I also find the out of focus area on the left a little bit distracting. And this is a shot that I would probably convert to black and white with, as Jay suggested, just a little bit of a bluish cast.
All right, last one.
All right, and this is another shot from Tanya Court. This one stood out to me because I always love photographing the autumn leaves as they fall in my backyard. Autumn in Ohio is absolutely breathtaking, and so it's always neat. Of course, we don't have leaves like these. We have maples mostly and oaks, but these are gorgeous too. So the one thing that really stood out to me here was that there's a lot going on. We don't have a single point of interest. Which leaf is the most important? Which leaf is this image about? And I think what I might do in a case like this is either get in even closer and just photograph the edge of a leaf, show that beautiful ripple that's happening on the edge of the leaves, or I would take one leaf, separate it out from its cousins, and let it be the most important element. A lot of times you'll see, photos of red leaves with one yellow leaf, or vice versa, or you'll see a single leaf on a background of a tree trunk, or a piece of wood, whatever it is, something like that. And you can, it's always okay to reach in, take a leaf, and put it where you want it. So that, that works. You can put it on moss, or you can whatever it is, whatever the surrounding area is, and let it just stand on its own. Um, the other thing that stands out to me here is that we have some really dark areas. The light is um pretty pretty hard. It looks like maybe it was you know earlier in the morning or later in the evening, but we still have some pretty heavy shadows. I might consider reducing the contrast in the darker areas, so they're not quite so heavy, or shooting on more of an overcast day, just a soft overcast, or even using a diffuser to create the same effect. Overcast skies are your natural diffuser, so just softens that light really nicely, takes away the distracting shadows, and I think it would help the image.
One other thing to point out, sweetheart, is the clamp that you use for macro shots.
Yeah, one of the things that I love to use is it's just called a plamp, and all it is a long piece of flexible plastic, and on each end it has a clamp. So I can clamp one end to my tripod or to a tree branch or to whatever, and I can clamp the other end to a leaf or a flower or whatever it is, and it has a softer, sort of a more gentle clamp on one end so that you don't have to damage whatever flower or whatever that you're hooking it to. In this case, I might hook the one end to my tripod, hook the other one to the leaf, bend it so it was in front of a backdrop that I really liked. Even a blue sky. I mean, blue and yellow are complementary colors. So one of these leaves up against a blue sky, and even better yet, backlit. How cool would that be?
Awesome.
Right? So, all right. So I think that's our last image. Does anybody else have anyone that Does anybody have anything they want to add to that? Brent, you haven't had a chance to talk much today.
Could I say something, Verena? There are three things you mentioned there that I noticed you doing when you were photographing macros in New Zealand. The using a diffuser to soften the light, moving something away from its surroundings so that you can separate it from the background, like moving the moss next to those mushrooms when we were photographing, and then also the complementary colors. I love those. So those are three great suggestions for photographing fall colors or autumn colors, depends on where you come from. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So I think that's it. We've gone exactly 45 minutes, so it's time to wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah. So thanks everybody for coming out, and we've had lots of comments in our Q&A, and people are really enjoying the critiques, having a little input over there. So thanks for that. We're really glad to have you all here. Am I missing anything, guys?
No, the next week's assignment, I just want to remind you, is about raw processing. I saw a bunch of photos. I made some comments on it. If you're going for a natural look, just one hint is look for the details in every part of the image, especially in the highlights when you process the photos. So good luck to everybody. I'll comment, and we'll do another critique for this in the beginning of June.
Yeah, and keep in mind...
Awesome. And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brent. Go ahead.
Can I just congratulate everyone in Visual Wilderness for keeping things going while the four of us were offline and in the wilderness in New Zealand. There was a lot of activity and people commenting on each other's images, and thank you guys for keeping everything going while we were on walkabout.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was awesome we were off the grid a lot. It was really hard to check in, and when we did check in, when we had a few minutes to see how much activity was happening, that people were helping each other along. I mean, it's just so awesome to see the community getting together like that and really, carrying each other to keep things going.
Thanks, guys.